in this brief are from publicly available sources. The UN is not in a position to verify or confirm any of the reported details relating to this incident. In the course of 26 to 29 September this year, 4 leaks were detected in the Nord Stream submarine pipelines in the Baltic Sea. The first leak was reported on Nord Stream 1 pipeline in the morning of 26 September in Europe, when seismologists detected a spike in activity. Second and third leaks were reported in the evening of 26 September on Nord Stream 1 pipeline. A fourth leak was reported in the morning of 29 September on Nord Stream 2 pipeline. Neither pipeline was in operation, as supplies in Nord Stream 1 were halted this month, and Nord Stream 2 never came into operation. However, both pipelines contain natural gas. The Nord Stream pipelines were reported to have held several hundreds of millions of cubic meters of natural gas at the time of the incident. At this stage, a site inspection has yet to be done, and details on what exactly happened remain unknown. While the causes of the incident are being investigated, it is equally urgent to address the consequences of these leaks. I would like to point 3 possible potential impacts of the leaks. First, the damage to the Nord Stream pipelines raises concerns regarding the uncertainty in the global energy markets. According to the third brief on the global impact of war in Ukraine, energy crisis by the UN Global Crisis Response Group, published in August this year, the high price volatility witnessed since the pandemic, particularly in 2022, suggests that prices remain at high levels and could rise yet again, causing socioeconomic stress across the world. The incident can exacerbate the high price volatility on the energy markets in Europe and around the world. Second, the potential environmental impact of the leaks is a matter of deep concern. Discharge of hundreds of millions of cubic meters of gas into the atmosphere would result in hundreds of thousands of tons of methane emissions. Over a 20-year time frame, methane has more than 80 times the planet warming potency of carbon dioxide, and roughly 30 times its potency over 100 years. It is not yet possible to assess how much methane is actually released in the atmosphere, given many uncertainties. Mr. President, third, the incident also makes manifestly clear the vulnerability of critical energy infrastructure. It underscores the importance of accelerating energy transition to create a clean, resilient, sustainable energy system, while ensuring universal access to affordable, reliable, and sustainable energy for all. As the Secretary General emphasized at the launch of the third brief by the Global Crisis Response Group, every country is part of this energy crisis. Mr. President, any attack on critical civilian infrastructure, including energy infrastructure, would be unacceptable. This incident must not be allowed to further increase tensions or deepen divisions in an already tense regional context. I thank you, the Council, for the opportunity to brief you.
Je remercie.
I thank Mr. Hanif for his briefing, and I now give the floor to Mr. Sergei Kopyanov.
Добрый день, дамы и господа.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On September 26th, over the course of one day, 3 pipelines of the Nord Stream gas pipeline system ruptured at once in the Baltic Sea, namely both lines of the Nord Stream 1 pipeline and one of the 2 lines of a Nord Stream 2 pipeline. The Nord Streams are offshore gas pipelines with a length of about 1,200 kilometers. They were built to ensure reliable direct supply of Russian gas to Europe. The projected annual capacity of the pipelines is 110 billion cubic meters in total. This represents a quarter of gas consumption in the European Union, or energy for 52 million European households. Since 2011, the Nord Stream pipeline has ensured the provision of nearly 500 billion of cubic meters of gas to European consumers. And now for more details about what happened on September 26th. At about 6 a.m. Central European time, the gas pipeline onshore platform controller recorded a pressure drop in line A. Earlier, at about 2 a.m. Central European time, the pressure drop was also recorded by the Cascade system. The pressure dropped rapidly from 103 to 7 bar in the German section. The leak site is located in the economic zone of Denmark, 25 kilometers southeast of the island of Bornholm. The distance to the German coast along the pipeline is 153 kilometers, and the German to the Russian coast is 1,081 kilometers. Later that same day, 2 more leaks occurred, this time on the Nord Stream 1 pipeline. At 7:12 p.m. Central European time, dispatchers from the Nord Stream 1 control center recorded a simultaneous pressure drop on both lines of the gas pipeline. While the pressure had been 165 bar before the incident, it subsequently dropped to 8 bar. The site of one of the leaks in Nord Stream 1 is located in the exclusive economic zone of Denmark, 54 kilometers northeast of the island of Bornholm. The distance along the pipeline to the German coast is 218 kilometers from there and 1,005 kilometers to the Russian coast. The location of the other rupture site is in the exclusive economic zone of Sweden, 59 kilometers northeast of the island of Bornholm, 224 kilometers from the German coast, and 999 kilometers from the Russian coast along the pipeline. Thus, both the leak sites are located several kilometers from one another. According to available estimates, the 3 lines contained about 800 million cubic meters of gas at the time of the incident. For comparison, this represents the consumption of Denmark over the course of 3 months. The data regarding the sudden drop in pressure and gas leakage make it possible to say with certainty that the leaks in the pipelines was caused by physical damage. Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 are modern, high-tech, and ultra-reliable offshore gas pipelines. The impeccability of the technical solutions used therein has been confirmed by years of safe operation. In the construction of the gas pipelines, pipes were used made of ultra-strong steel that is several centimeters thick and reinforced with a concrete shell. At the moment of the incident, gas was not being transported through the pipelines for various reasons, but all lines were in a fully operational state. We have now begun searching for possible solutions to make the Nord Stream system operational once again. The time for the work necessary to restore the system cannot be estimated at the moment, but we can say with certainty that the task will be very daunting from a technical standpoint. The initial steps will be to carry out a physical examination of the rupture sites. Overall, a situation where 3 leaks occur on 3 lines of a pipeline in one day is absolutely unprecedented. Europe has essentially been indefinitely deprived of a key route for the delivery of a crucial energy resource. Russia and Gazprom has invested huge amounts of effort and funds to construct and to launch these pipelines, because this is the shortest and the safest, as we thought at the time, route for Russian gas to reach European consumers. Currently, the pipelines are ruptured. Thank you.
Je remercie.
I thank Mr. Kupianov for his briefing. And I now give the floor to Mr. El Mazega.
Merci.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, representatives, I am a researcher at the French Institute for Foreign Relations, and I have for several years been working on issues related to Ukraine
I can
in English.
concur with Mr. Kuprianov's assessment that the Nord Stream 1 and 2 corridors were designed and led on the bottom of the sea in an extraordinary state-of-the-art technology with a view to reducing the risk of any significant damage eventuating from storms, non-exploded Second World War bombs, vessel anchors, fishing trawls, or sinking ships. These are great pipelines. So to my best knowledge, an accident can be ruled out. I am, however, not in a position to tell you what exactly has happened. Instead, in my remarks, I will try to contextualize these unprecedented events, as Mr. Kuprianov put them. In a nutshell, the explosions are another episode in a long-lasting geopolitical confrontation between the US and Russia on the one hand, and Europe and Russia on the other hand, where energy trade and pipeline infrastructure have taken a center stage and have been weaponized. Allow me to go 1 year back in June 2021, when the first unprecedented intervention by Gazprom on European gas market took place. Gazprom unusually started to reduce its gas exports to European markets, however, respecting contractual obligations. This pushed gas prices up and led to a slow increase in imports of liquefied natural gas to compensate. Nord Stream was indeed fully operational by then. This last year happened at the climax of US-Russia tensions around Nord Stream 2, whose construction was being finalized but slowed down due to US sanctions. Finally, the pipeline construction was completed following a Biden-Putin meeting in Geneva, and by fall 2021, the opening of the pipeline was pending the completion of a certification procedure to make sure it complies with EU law. Last point, important one, the reduction in Gazprom supplies last year happened as the EU had published its accelerated decarbonization plan for 2020 and as the Russian military buildup had started around Ukraine. So Russia's aggression of Ukraine in February this year aggravated the gas supply tensions. End of February, Germany stopped the certification procedure for Nord Stream 2 indefinitely. Shortly after, Gazprom reduced gas supplies to Europe via Poland and Ukraine, and in the following months, using various pretexts and reasons, started to progressively cut off entirely most of its customers, but this time in key disregard of long-term contracts. This summer, in an unprecedented move, Gazprom further reduced export volumes via Nord Stream, blaming Western sanctions on equipment. So this extraordinary pipeline infrastructure, as we speak, had been actually shut down for many days and weeks. Europe and many important countries around the world have been severely impacted by Gazprom's market behavior. On the one hand, in Europe, we have soaring prices, which cause incredible burden and pain on consumers, utilities, and public finances, while Gazprom has made huge profits. And in the rest of the world, many, many large importers are deprived of access to LNG cargoes because simply they cannot afford to pay them. The consequence is clear. Many countries and companies have turned to dirty fuels such as heavy oil or coal as LNG became unavoidable, of course, causing huge, lasting environmental damage. So where did we stand just before the pipeline explosions? Well, Gazprom's contractual relations, much to my regret, and an incredible, unprecedented move with most of its European customers were in full tatters, and flows through the pipeline were stopped for several weeks already. Against this backdrop, the relevance and value of the Nord Stream corridors to Russia has obviously declined. Financially, this huge investment is de facto a sunk cost investment. Gazprom had, as I said, stopped transporting gas through Nord Stream, and whatever the relevance of Gazprom explanations, Gazprom has the ability to reroute and had the ability to reroute gas going through Nord Stream via either Belarus or Ukraine, but this did not happen. It is a widely shared view among experts that the Nord Stream 2 pipeline would probably never have been taken into operation following Russia's aggression against Ukraine. So the EU has been working in past months to phase out Russian gas as soon as possible, meaning when contractual obligations allow, and in turn, Russia has pledged to rapidly pivot its gas infrastructure to Asia, notably China and India. So what is the new situation we are in now following the pipeline explosions? I cannot but stress the incredible massive methane leak, and IPCC reports tell us how dangerous this is. And as a footnote, it is regrettable that Russia has not signed up to the global methane pledge, and satellite pictures of Russia suggest Gazprom has been ramping up gas flaring operations in past months. Spot gas prices are up again, and Gazprom can still export a lot more gas via Belarus and Ukraine if it really wanted to. I see little impact on US LNG exports to Europe in the short to long term. US supplies to Europe will remain steady unless the weather interferes. And overall, there is a clear upward limit to additional LNG supplies from the US in future to Europe, hence why Europe is looking for other options to help replacing some of the Russian gas. So to finish, these explosions set an extraordinary precedent where energy infrastructure is targeted by obvious sabotage operations of sophisticated nature. We had seen this before in Ukraine. This should be, in my view, not only a concern for Europeans, but actually for the rest of the world, because anything happening in Europe has global implications. I thank you for your attention.
Je remercie
I thank Mr. El Mazega, for that briefing. And I now give the floor to members of the Security Council who wish to make statements. And I give the floor first to the representative of the Russian Federation.
Mr. President, we thank the representatives of the UN Secretariat and Gazprom for their briefings. We also thank Mr. Almazega. I will not comment on his interesting but at times not always objective briefing regarding what is happening on the gas market. We have a representative of Gazprom here with us, and I think he could do so himself if he so chooses. Mr. President, Russia requested today's meeting in connection with the acts of sabotage on 3 lines of the Nord Stream offshore gas pipeline system on September 27, 2022, in the exclusive economic zone of Denmark and Sweden near the Danish island of Bornholm. The Prosecutor General's Office of the Russian Federation has already initiated criminal proceedings under the Article of Acts of International Terrorism. A preliminary investigation has been opened. Right now, let's simply take a look at the facts, side by side. Fact number 1, a few weeks before the start of the special military operation, U.S. President John Biden said, and I quote, "If Russia invades, that means tanks and troops crossing the border of Ukraine again, then there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it." End of quote. In response to a journalist's question about how this could be possible if Nord Stream 2 is controlled by Germany and not by the U.S., President Biden replied, "I promise you we will be able to do it." This message was then parroted by many U.S. officials. Fact number 2. In June 2022, the Danish island of Bornholm, where 3 months later the Nord Stream incident was to take place, was the site of large-scale NATO exercises in the Baltic Sea, or BALTOPS. As the U.S. publication Sea Power wrote, one of the main objectives for the alliance during these exercises was to test unmanned underwater vehicles, for which the waters off the island were best suited. Following the conclusion of the exercises, the American landing ship USS Kearsarge did not leave the Baltic Sea and remained near the Danish island until the 20th of September. But the most interesting part is that ever since the end of August, the ship's helicopter unit began to systematically patrol the area of Bornholm Island, and the flight path of the helicopters curiously coincides with the route of the gas pipelines. I want to stress that this is open data on the geolocation of maritime and air transport, which is collected on the basis of data from transponders. In other words, the United States did not hide their presence in the area and carried out their maneuvers in a demonstrative and deliberate manner. Fact number 3, immediately after the incident, the former Minister of Defense and Foreign Affairs of Poland, Radek Sikorski, posted a photo of the leak site on Twitter and openly thanked the United States for this sabotage. He wrote, "Thank you, USA." Here is a photo of that tweet. Under it, the acting member of the European Parliament commented on his own tweet and said, I quote, "There's no shortage of pipeline capacity for taking gas from Russia to Western Europe, including Germany. Nord Stream's only logic was for Putin to be able to blackmail or wage war on Eastern Europe with impunity." End of quote. Yesterday, apparently realizing that he had said too much, he deleted his tweet. We also cannot fail to note that Mr. Sikorski's wife, Anna Applebaum, is a person who enjoys access to the circle of power in Washington, D.C. and a wide variety of information. Fact number 4. Almost at the same time as the sabotage on the Nord Stream took place, the Polish city of Golinów marked the official opening of the Baltic Pipe gas pipeline from Norway. Poland has long positioned this pipeline as a salvation from the Nord Stream, even though, incidentally, the capacity of the Baltic pipe is far inferior to that of Nord Stream. Fact number 5 is the statement by NATO in connection with the incident warning of the danger of strikes against NATO infrastructure. It's as though NATO is afraid that someone will retaliate for something and take revenge on them. An uneasy conscience betrays itself, as the saying goes. As in any investigation, first and foremost, it is important to establish who benefits from the current situation, or as investigators say, who had the motive and the opportunity to commit the crime. Let's analyze this further. Does the destruction of Nord Stream benefit European states? Hardly. They, in this case, become dependent on a more expensive and extremely unreliable supplier. And I'm referring to the host country of the UN headquarters. If we set aside the Polish, Czech, and Baltic politicians who have gone completely mad with Russophobia, then despite the off-the-charts anti-Russian hysteria in the EU, experts cannot fail to recognize the danger of such a scenario and its consequences for the European economy. Serious environmental damage has been dealt to the Baltic Sea. Maritime communications are under threat. Colleagues from Denmark and Sweden confirmed all this in their letters to the Security Council. The objective significance of Nord Stream 1 and 2 and their contribution to Europe's energy security has been repeatedly stressed by top EU officials, as well as those of its member states. For the European Commission, Nord Stream initially had the status of a project of common interest and enjoyed full political support. The gas pipeline system has made a significant contribution to diversifying gas supply routes, like the Yamal Europe and Turkish Stream pipelines. Their commissioning has made it possible to gradually begin to move away from the transit dependence of Europe's gas supply on the monopoly of the Kiev government, which has become known for its unscrupulous business practices, or in other words, simply theft. Germany's leadership has been saying for many years that the need for gas for Germany and Europe will only increase. In 2021, Austrian authorities stated that Nord Stream contributes to the energy security of Europe and welcomed steps that would improve the reliability of the continent's energy supply. The aftermath of the ensuing energy crisis has proven right those who understood the importance of Nord Stream in ensuring stable and predictable energy supplies. The interruptions in gas supplies caused by European and American sanctions in 2022 already negatively affecting European industry, its profitability and competitiveness, and are provoking the immigration of skilled labor and the transfer of production capacities outside of Europe and to the United States in particular. Energy poverty has not only returned, it has soared to the top of the agenda not only in the developing world, but in developed countries as well. The resumption of deliveries primarily under long-term contracts, as Russia has offered and continues to offer, would allow to stabilize the situation in the manufacturing industry and avoid an energy collapse. The next question is whether the destruction of the Nord Stream benefits Russia. If you look at it from the point of view of common sense and not in the spirit of morbid fantasies about Russia being ready to do anything to intimidate Europe, then of course not. It makes no sense for us to destroy a project in which we have invested such a huge amount and from which there could be a significant economic return for us with our own hands. After all, you yourself in the West have claimed that we profit from the export of energy resources and benefit from their rising prices. And finally, the main question, whether what happened with the Nord Stream benefits the United States. And the answer is undoubtedly. American liquefied natural gas suppliers should be celebrating the manifold increase in LNG supplies to Europe. And from a political standpoint, the last thread ensuring the energy independence of the EU has been ruptured. Due to the energy crisis, European production has been hastily transferred to the U.S. They are receiving top personnel, advanced technologies, production resources, things that Europe has been accumulating and developing for decades. The residents of Europe have been left to face their problems alone. And across the ocean, no one cares that Europe is in for a very dark, cold, and long winter. In connection with these very simple and logical questions, I want to ask the U.S. representative, can you confirm right now in this room that your country is not involved and has nothing to do with this sabotage? Colleagues, of course, we are not setting the goal of finding and naming the perpetrators today. The Security Council is not a judicial body. It should not take on such tasks. That is why Russia advocates a comprehensive investigation to shed light on the true circumstances of the incident. We would be interested in hearing the views of our Western colleagues today and hearing their official position. We hope that you will abstain from meaningless Russophobic verbal gymnastics, such as those that you used in relation to the Ukrainian strikes on the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Should we expect you to make statements that following the masochistic shelling of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, where we ourselves are located, we began to detonate our very own gas pipelines? It is quite clear to us that carrying out sabotage of such complexity and scale is beyond the power of ordinary terrorists. We consider the actions to damage the gas pipelines to be deliberate sabotage against a crucial element of the Russian Federation's energy infrastructure. This is an attack that could hardly have happened without the involvement of state or state-controlled actors. We will certainly identify all those involved in this act. Those standing behind it cannot claim to be a non-party to the armed conflict or to have neutral status, which, it must be admitted, Western countries have long violated. Moreover, I want to stress that any international investigation into the incident can claim to be objective only if it involves experts from Russia. We are also convinced of the need for not only those countries in whose territorial waters the sabotage was carried out to participate, but also representatives of Germany, as it was the main intended recipient of Nord Stream gas. If the theory that certain states are involved in these terrorist acts is confirmed, then this will mean a deliberate escalation of the conflict. I hope, colleagues, that everyone in this room is aware of the dangerous brink to which those who committed this act of sabotage are leading us. Thank you.
Je remercie.
I thank the representative of the Russian Federation for his statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Norway.
Thank you, President, and we thank the briefers for their updates. The damage to the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines in international waters within the economic zones of Sweden and Denmark is of deep concern. This has created a very serious situation in terms of climate and environmental consequences and risk to shipping. We remain in close contact with our Nordic neighbors, and we thank Denmark and Sweden for the joint letter sent to the Security Council. President, all currently available information indicates that the damage to Nord Stream 1 and 2 is the result of deliberate and irresponsible act of sabotage. We need to get to the bottom of what has happened and why, even if it may take some time. Norway fully supports the investigation launched by Danish, Swedish and German authorities aimed at getting full clarity of this incident. President, this has occurred against the backdrop of war and energy crisis in Europe and beyond. Those responsible clearly wanted to create fear and insecurity on the European continent. As a major supplier of gas, Norway is aware of the special responsibility we have to safeguard security on the Norwegian continental shelf. We will keep in close dialogue with our allies and partners on this issue. I thank you.
Je remercie la représentante.
I thank the representative of Norway for that statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Mexico. Thank you, sir, says the representative of Mexico. I would like to thank Mr. Hanif Kuprianov and Mr. Eo Masega for their briefings and the information they shared with us. Mexico has, with concern, followed recent incidents in the Baltic Sea, which led to leaks in the gas pipelines, Nord Stream 1 and 2. We regret the impact that this will have on the environment, on international navigation, and unfortunately, these incidents are a further destabilizing factor for energy markets worldwide, which had already been very much affected by the war in Ukraine. Now, what's most complex is that given the available information, it seems unlikely that it was an accident. Everything seems to point to sabotage. And this is particularly of concern given the fact that this is taking place. As we heard, it will not be easy to repair, and the damage inflicted could have very serious consequences economically and in other areas. So it is necessary to quickly initiate a rigorous and impartial investigation. It needs to be conducted in order to determine the circumstances which led to the damaging of civilian infrastructure and to identify those responsible. To conclude, I would reiterate that this very regrettable incident compels us truly to rethink how are we going to focus the efforts of the Council to reducing tensions and in order to start looking with more determination for a solution to the conflict by way of dialogue and diplomacy before the conflict continues to escalate week after week, given the contemplative attitude of the Council. Thank you.
Je remercie.
I thank the representative of Mexico for that statement, and I give the floor to the representative of Ireland.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thanks also to Assistant Secretary General Hanif for his briefing and to our other briefers. Ireland is deeply concerned by the sudden and extensive gas leaks detected in the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines earlier this week. The immediate priority must be to ensure maritime safety and avert the risk of a climate and ecological disaster. The potential for a massive and highly damaging emission event is a serious concern. All the analysis to date indicates that these leaks are the result of deliberate acts of sabotage. We understand that at least 2 detonations occurred underwater, damaging the pipelines and causing major leaks of natural gas into the Baltic Sea. The magnitude of the explosions was measured at 2.3 and 2.1 on the Richter scale, corresponding to an explosive load in the region of several hundred kilos. The irresponsibility of such acts cannot be overstated and must deeply concern us all. That such acts might occur now, in the midst of a global energy crisis and with winter fast approaching, makes it all the more appalling. Sweden, Denmark and Germany have our full support in managing the consequences of this indefensible act. We stand ready to provide any assistance necessary. We also strongly support the ongoing investigations in the most affected member states to determine the full facts behind the leaks. Mr. President, let us be clear. Any deliberate disruption of European energy infrastructure is utterly unacceptable. Ireland, along with our EU partners, will ensure that it is met with a robust and united response. Thank you.
Je remercie le représentant.
I thank the representative of Ireland for that statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Gabon.
Thank you, Mr. President. I thank the Associate Secretary General, Mr. Hani, for his briefing. We have listened closely to the briefings of Mr. Kupriyanov and Mr. Elmazega. Mr. President, the information that we have heard here today regarding the significant leaks from the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines are cause for great concern and worry regarding the possibility for a disaster off the coast of the Baltic Sea. The scale of the risk and the economic and environmental potential impacts calls for an urgent, well-thought response in order to assess the level of the threat and pre-arm ourselves against the potential negative consequences of methane escaping into the atmosphere. We note with concern the measures that have been taking regarding limited the navigation in the affected area, and we hope that these are precautionary measures that will take into account the energy security and the need to ensure energy supply at the beginning of winter. We hope above all that the damage to the pipelines will not lead to further hostilities between the warring parties. We wish to recall not only that we oppose the war, but also that the war is not a state of lawlessness. There are still strict rules protecting civilian populations and civilian infrastructure. We reiterate our call for an immediate cessation of hostilities between the warring parties and stress the urgency of the need to take action to repair the damage and limit the negative impacts. We also call for an independent investigation in order to shed full light on this incident and establish those responsible. Thank you, Mr. President.
Je remercie.
I thank the representative of Gabon for his statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of the United Kingdom.
Thank you, President. And I'd like to thank our briefers for setting out what we know so far about this case, which is clearly still very limited. But once again in this chamber, we've heard some absurd Russian claims and conspiracy theories this afternoon. Russia's request for this meeting was a cynical attempt to distract from Putin's illegal annexation of Ukrainian territory today. President, the damage to Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 pipelines in the Baltic Sea is of deep concern. These leaks are not only causing risks to shipping, but also substantial environmental damage in the Baltic Sea. They are releasing enormous amounts of methane into the Earth's atmosphere. We agree the assessment that all currently available information indicates this damage is the result of sabotage. We strongly support the investigation by the authorities of Denmark, Sweden, and Germany. Intentional damage to civilian infrastructure is reckless and irresponsible, wherever it takes place. We must establish clear international norms that such damage is utterly unacceptable. For NATO's part, as set out in yesterday's statement of the North Atlantic Council, allies remain committed to prepare for, deter, and defend against any hybrid tactics by state and non-state actors, including coercive approaches to energy. We are clear that any deliberate attacks against allies' critical infrastructure would be met with a united and determined response. The United Kingdom will continue to work alongside our partners to protect Europe's energy security. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the United Kingdom for that statement. I now give the floor to the representative of the United States.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you to Assistant Secretary Hanif and our other briefers today. I'll be a little longer than I intended, given that, once again, our Russian colleagues have decided to instrumentalize a Security Council meeting to spread conspiracy theories and disinformation, and to quote my colleague, morbid fantasies. But let me begin by saying, clearly and unequivocally, we're deeply concerned by the apparent sabotage that took place on the Nord Stream 1 and the Nord Stream 2 pipelines. As we just heard from the United Kingdom, deliberate actions to damage critical infrastructure can't be tolerated. Efforts to investigate are underway, and the United States strongly supports European efforts to conduct this important investigation. It could take time, but the search for the truth will not be rushed. It's important that we first establish the facts. Now, I know our Russian colleagues have had a bad afternoon, actually a bad day. They had to sit and watch that strangely odd fascist Nuremberg-style rally combined with Las Vegas 1970s show that happened in Moscow this morning to celebrate the illegal annexation of Ukrainian territory. And that afternoon, they got hit by the Council's vote, clearly sending the message about their annexation of Ukrainian territory. But I don't think that justifies, once again, the Russian delegation raising conspiracy theories and mass disinformation in this Council. My Russian colleague continues to use inflammatory rhetoric that is accusing the United States of being involved in this act of sabotage. Let me answer his question. Let me be clear. The United States categorically denies any involvement in this incident, and we reject any assertions saying the contrary. Let me also talk about energy supply, since that was raised, and the relationship between the United States and our European friends and partners in the energy sector. It's been clear for years that Russia is not a reliable energy supplier. So yes, the United States has been working with our European partners and our allies to increase their energy resilience and provide alternative supplies. We are working on a short-term basis and a long-term basis to address energy security and the stability of global energy markets, not only for Europe, but for the world. I'll end there because while we get to the bottom of what happened at Nord Stream, we're not going to let Russia's disinformation apparatus distract us from addressing the main issue at hand, which is the continuing aggression against Ukraine and the destruction of civilian infrastructure on Ukrainian sovereign territory. It's important that we use this meeting not to foster conspiracy theories, but to focus our attention on Russia's blatant violation of the Charter and its crimes in Ukraine. In only half a year, Ukraine has become the scene of some of the worst mass-scale violence, including destruction of infrastructure, that Europe has witnessed in decades. Of deep concern to us all is the conclusion last week by the UN Commission of Inquiry that Russia committed war crimes in Ukraine, including deliberate destruction of infrastructure. Sabotage of critical infrastructure should be a concern to us all. In the context of Russia's aggression against Ukraine, we have seen numerous Russian attacks damaging civilian infrastructure. We witnessed Russia recklessly seize control of Europe's largest nuclear power plant, risking a nuclear disaster in Europe. We saw countless attacks destroying civilian electricity infrastructure. Russia attacked energy and water infrastructure in Kharkiv, Zimev, and Pavlograd on September 11th and 12th that caused mass blackouts and water cutoffs. On September 14th, there were reports of Russia striking a dam at the Karachnev Reservoir, causing fear of flooding. We've also heard in this very chamber UN experts recount numerous verified instances of harm to civilians and civilian infrastructure resulting from Russia's war against Ukraine. These reports include credible reporting of the bombing of educational institutions, medical clinics, hospitals, killing of aid workers, medical staff, and patients. Evidence of the scale of atrocities continues to mount as Russia ignores international calls for an immediate stop to end this war. Despite efforts that we heard today to distract us from the truth and to distribute more disinformation and slightly wacky theories, the facts on the ground in Ukraine speak for themselves. Russian attacks in Ukraine have hit civilians, and they've reduced cities to rubble, resulting in thousands dead and injured. As we did with this afternoon's vote, we must continue to speak out against Russia's atrocities, this war, and the wanton disregard for international law that we are seeing on the ground. We must not allow Russia to continue to use this platform, this council, to spread lies and disinformation, which they have done since the very beginning of this war in Ukraine. I'm sure all of us recall how the days before the war began, the Russian delegation was tweeting out that there was no intention to invade the Ukraine. We must continue to investigate and bear witness to Russia's atrocities, and we must demand accountability. The United States will not be distracted from seeking justice and accountability. We will not be distracted from defending the UN Charter against such blatant violations and transgressions. Thank you, Mr. President.
Je remercie le représentant.
I thank the representative of the United States for his statement, and I give the floor to the representative of China.
谢谢主席。我要感谢3位同保人的通报。我们对北溪天然气管线今日发生。
Thank you. I thank the briefings by the three briefers. We're still concerned about the recent multiple leaks and powerful underwater explosions on the Nord Stream gas pipeline. The Nord Stream gas line is the main artery for energy transportation in Europe, providing vital gas supplies to 23 European countries. The physical disruption of the pipeline as a result of leaks has exacerbated the energy supply shortages in Europe. Consumers around the world, particularly in developing countries, are likely to suffer from the resulting volatility in energy markets and the soaring energy price. Leaking is still going on, and the impact of the incident on shipping routes and the ecological environment of the waters involved is still playing out at the time when Europe and the world are facing with the proliferation of intractable challenges. This indeed is a great and tragic calamity that we do not wish to see. Mr. President, we note that some of the information right now indicates that the leaks this time is not an accident and is very likely the result of deliberate sabotage. If true, this would constitute an attack on transnational civilian facilities and submarine pipelines in violation of international law. We also note that all stakeholders agree that an objective, impartial, and professional investigation into the leaks is essential. As the brief stressed just now, that the leaks this time highlight the vulnerability of transnational infrastructure. We're ready to work with all parties to maintain the security of cross-border infrastructure. Thank you, President.
Je remercie le représentant.
I thank the representative of China for his statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of the United Arab Emirates.
President, and I'd also like to begin by thanking Assistant Secretary General Naveed Hamid for his briefing, and we've also listened carefully to the other briefers today and take note of the information provided. We are also deeply concerned by the severe damage to the Nord Stream 1 and 2 gas pipelines. While the exact cause remains unknown, it appears that the damage has resulted from a deliberate act of sabotage. At a time of heightened geopolitical tensions and global turmoil, potential missteps and further escalation must be avoided. Now is the time to maintain calm and establish the facts regarding the cause of this damage through a transparent and comprehensive investigation. Mr. President, as the world continues to suffer the consequences of the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, maintaining maritime and energy security around the world is fundamental to ensuring all of our stability and prosperity. Further volatility in energy markets will put increasing strain on communities around the world, particularly those in developing countries. Furthermore, this incident has resulted in a grave environmental disaster with long-term repercussions not only to the Baltic Sea region, but to the world. While the full environmental cost is only now being assessed, it is likely to represent one of the worst greenhouse gas leaks ever recorded. Mr. President, the world faces severe environmental, economic, and energy challenges while on an already difficult path to recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. The damage to such energy infrastructure and the resulting environmental and economic harm further exacerbates these challenges. We underline the critical importance of avoiding any steps that aggravate the fragile regional and global situation. All efforts must be made to ensure that the facts are properly established and that no further incidents take place. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of the United Arab Emirates for her statement, and I give the floor to the representative of Albania.
We are also deeply concerned by the reports about large leaks that were detected on September 27 in both Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 pipelines in exclusive economic zones of Denmark and Sweden in the Baltic Sea. The plumes of gas rising to the surface are causing environmental damage, and the impact on maritime life in the Baltic Sea are likely to be very substantial. The information available so far indicates that leaks are the result of a deliberate act of sabotage. Such acts are unacceptable and threaten seriously the international security. We support the investigations underway to find the origin of the damage and the possible perpetrators. It is very important to get full clarity. We share the commitment of the international community to deter and defend against the misuse of energy and other hybrid tactics by state and non-state actors. Any deliberate attack against critical infrastructure should be met with a united response. While we wait for the results of the investigation, we must not lose sight of the larger context. While the military aggression of Russia in Ukraine continues and has further escalated, reckless and irresponsible acts of sabotage on critical energy infrastructure may be seen as acts of intimidation of the directly affected countries, the Baltic region and the European Union. Since 24th February, we have witnessed repeated attacks on civilian infrastructure, including by putting in serious danger nuclear plants, and energy is being used as a weapon of geopolitical gains. It is therefore imperative that we join efforts to promote energy security and to prevent further threats and actions. Thank you.
I thank the representatives of Albania for her statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Kenya.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also want to thank Mr. Navid Hanif, ASG for Economic Development, and the two briefers for their briefings this evening. Mr. President, Europe and the world cannot afford any escalation or spread of the war in Ukraine. Many countries that were already struggling to build back after the COVID pandemic are bearing the brunt of the impact of this war, including the surge in food, energy, and farm input prices. That is why, Mr. President, Kenya continues to call for an immediate cessation of hostilities to allow space for diplomacy in the search of a political solution that is aligned to the UN Charter and that safeguards Ukraine's territorial integrity while being sensitive to the security concerns of all parties. I thank you for your attention.
I thank the representative of Kenya for her statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of India.
Thank you, Mr. President. I thank ASG and other two briefers for their statements. We are closely following developments with regard to the evolving situation. We continue to urge relevant sides to exercise restraint and not engage in any activity which may disrupt peace and stability. Any targeting of civilian infrastructure and facilities must be avoided. The present incidents have the potential to impact stability in Europe and beyond, apart from negatively affecting the environment. Since the beginning of the Ukraine conflict, the global south has been disproportionately impacted by its consequences, including those related to food, fuel, and energy crisis. The present situation, if left unchecked, has the potential to further exacerbate this situation. We would support calls for an independent and objective investigation in this regard. India strongly reiterates the need for an immediate cessation of all hostilities and a return to dialogue and diplomacy. We have consistently reiterated that the global order is anchored on international law, UN Charter, and respect for territorial integrity and sovereignty of states. I thank you.
I thank the representative of India for his statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Brazil.
Thank you, Mr. President. I thank ASG Hanif, as well as Mr. Krupianov, and Mr. Io Mazega for their briefings. This week's incident is undoubtedly cause for concern for all, in light of its potential to further disrupt Europe's energy security with rippling effects on the world economy. We must also be aware to the significant environmental impact such a disaster poses, to local maritime life, and to the amount of greenhouse gases leaked, which threatens our global effort against climate change. It is critical that reactions are based on sound information. We encourage the sharing of additional information to Council members on the status of the Nord Stream pipelines on a regular basis. We also believe that an investigation into the events should precede any conclusions. It is in the interest of all to clarify the incident and seek a prompt solution to avoid worsening the energy crisis in Europe. We encourage those involved to cooperate in the investigation efforts and to work together to ensure the necessary repairs take place as soon as possible. And I thank you.
I thank the representative of Brazil for that statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Ghana.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to thank the briefers for sharing with the Council their assessments of the situation. Ghana notes with much concern the unprecedented damage caused to the Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 gas pipelines, resulting in the leakage of natural gas in the area. We have also noted the leakage has necessitated the demarcation of a no-sail zone and caused some disruptions to maritime straits that traverse the affected area. Like the wider international community, we are concerned about the immediate and potentially long-term damage to the marine environment and climate in the region. We believe that urgent and independent investigations are necessary to determine the circumstances leading to the leakage in the two pipelines and guide appropriate remedial action, including ensuring accountability by any persons or state found to have been complicit in this matter. The safety and security of the European energy infrastructure, like all other critical infrastructure situated on land, in maritime areas or cyberspace, requires the concerted efforts of all member states and the wider international community to prevent foreseeable interruptions in services that are critical to the survival of the people who rely on them. Indeed, the Security Council in its resolution 2341 recognized the increasing interdependence of countries on critical infrastructure and encouraged cooperation at all levels to ensure their safety and protection from all forms of harm. We accordingly call on all stakeholders to work closely to resolve any issues affecting the security of the Nord Stream gas pipelines and such other critical infrastructure. We urge restraint by all parties concerned and caution against unilateral actions. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Ghana for that statement, and I will now make a statement in my capacity as representative of France. France is very concerned by the two submarine explosions that hit Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 gas pipelines on the 27th of September, which led to 4 methane gas leaks near the Danish island of Bornholm. These events are without precedent, and France stands in full solidarity with Denmark and Sweden, who were directly impacted by the security and environmental consequences. The situation is very serious, and the threat should be taken seriously. All available information points to the fact that these leaks are the result of a deliberate act, let's state it clearly, an act of sabotage. 2 seismic events were recorded before the leaks, the explosive load measuring some equivalent of 500 kilograms of TNT. So this is not a coincidence. These events are human in source. I'd like to thank Denmark and Sweden for the letter they sent to the presidency of the Council yesterday. It's very helpful to the work of the Council. France denounces this irresponsible act which endangers maritime navigation and the environment. The coercive use of energy is unacceptable, and we call for light to be shed on the source of these explosions and support the investigations that will be conducted by the concerned countries. Any deliberative attempt to attack critical infrastructure is intolerable and should be considered a hostile act. The European Union will stand firm and united in its response to this attack on its energy infrastructure, just as it would against any attempt to attack the safety of its energy supplies. I resume my functions as President of the Council. The representative of the Russian Federation has asked for the floor to make another statement, and I give it to him now.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I am thankful to my U.S. colleague for his direct response to our direct question. Our direct question was whether they could confirm right now and in this chamber that your country is not involved in this act of sabotage. And the response from my U.S. colleague was that he declared in this room that the U.S. denies any involvement in this incident. And I'm thankful to him for that answer. But I'd like to ask another question. After your words, as well as the words of our British colleague, what do you refer to when you say Russian disinformation and conspiracy theories? We didn't say who was guilty here before an investigation is carried out. All we did is cite facts. You can't deny the words of your own president, to refute your own his words, public words. Those are a quote, and that is a fact, as are the other quotes and facts that I cited. It is a fact that in June 2022, NATO exercises, Baltops exercises were held near the island of Bornholm, and it's a fact that the foreign minister of Poland, Mr. Sikorski, published the tweet that I showed you where he thanked the USA for what took place with the pipelines. The opening of the Baltic pipeline from Norway is also a fact, and NATO's announcement following the sabotage that strikes on NATO infrastructure unacceptable, that is also a fact. These are all merely facts. Will you deny that the current energy crisis in Europe is objectively increasing the competitiveness of U.S. energy producers? Is that a conspiracy theory? This is an objective reality of economic benefits for the United States. And finally, before the U.S. statement, we didn't link the Nord Stream incident with the Ukraine situation, but now we can see that our Western colleagues are considering this act of sabotage, no matter who may have committed it, as a form of revenge for Russia's actions in Ukraine. And I think that that statement narrows down the suspects and can help the investigation greatly. Thank you.
Je remercie.
I thank the representative of the Russian Federation for that statement. I believe that the representative of the United States has asked for the floor also.
Monsieur le Président, I'll take the floor briefly. Again, I categorically deny any U.S. involvement in this incident. I also think we have heard quite categorically, both from me and from one of our briefers this morning, that the energy situation in Europe, however one wants to describe it, is more affected by Russia's unreliability as an energy supplier than anything to do with the United States. I also would like to point out that, as the Russian delegation itself has said, the facts they've pointed out are clear. There's no hiding of anything that's been said. But it's Russia that, as I laid out, has a record over the last 7 months of destroying civilian infrastructure, of causing suffering and loss across Ukraine. So if there's any country, perhaps, that has a record of doing the kind of thing that we're discussing here today, it isn't the United States. Thank you.
Je remercie.
I thank the representative of the United States for that statement. There are no more speakers on the list. Before adjourning this session, which is the last for the month of September, I would like to express the sincere appreciation of the delegation of France to the members of the Council, as well as to the Secretariat of the Council for all the support they have provided us. And here I'm thinking about the staff responsible for staffing the sessions, the interpreters, translators, conference service officers, verbatim reporters, and security staff. And as this session is concluding, I'd like to wish good luck to the delegation of Gabon, who will be presiding for the month of October. The session is adjourned. I'm sorry. I apologize. I adjourned before the Russian Federation representative could speak.
Mr. President, before we say the words of gratitude to you for the French presidency during the month of September, we were informed in the course of the meeting that one of our briefers, namely the representative of Gazprom, wanted to make a brief comment at the end of the meeting, and I think that was transmitted to the French presidency, and I would request you to grant him this if that's acceptable to the presidency.
Monsieur le Président,
I do not intend to turn the floor back to the briefers, but if the majority owner of Gazprom wishes to do so, you can go ahead.
Спасибо, благодарю вас.
Thank you very much. I would like to briefly thank Mr. El Mazega for his overview of the gas market, although we categorically disagree with him. Nord Stream 1 and 2 at present. I did not give you the floor, says the president. The representative of the Russian Federation has the floor.
Показалось мало.
Mr. President, I cannot speak for Gazprom. I just passed the request of Gazprom to speak, and that was it.
très bien. Je suis heureux.
Very well. I'm pleased that Gazprom can ask for the floor through Russia. If the owner of Gazprom wishes to speak, he may have the floor. Otherwise, the meeting is adjourned.
I value your irony, Mr. President, but just to make things straight, the representative of Gazprom, whom we facilitated to participate in this meeting, obviously, requested it through us because he has the means of communicating through us, and not because the Russian state is the major shareholder of Gazprom.
Le représentant de Gazprom a eu la parole.
The representative of Gazprom has had the opportunity to speak along other participants. I thank you. The meeting is adjourned.